Hello and welcome to Aftersound Review, and this is my review for Moondrop variations. As you may have known that actually this is one of their latest products along with the Moondrop Spark, their true wireless, and it's using one dynamic driver, two balancer armature and two electrostatic drivers. Actually this is quite interesting because they have made a flagship IM, the Moondrop Solis, using 4 BA and also 2 electrostatic driver, but it doesn't really get a lot of praise. In fact, I have seen a lot of people praising the S8 more than the Solis itself. And how is it with this Moondrop variation? Because it will cost less than the Moondrop Solis. And yeah, I'd really like to know what's happened with this Moondrop variations. And I have to say thank you for Mr. Denny for providing me with this review unit so I could review them. Okay, just like usual, I will review them from the build, fit, frequency response, sound, and comparison. Before talking about the build quality, I need to mention a bit about this carrying case that you will get. This is the previous Moondrop's carrying case. This is from the Moondrop KXSS. For me, this is the simplest one, but it's also the smallest one. Somehow I barely use this because that's too small, and I really like this one. It's the carrying case from the Moondrop Blessing 2 and also the Moondrop S8. It's the biggest so far, and it also has zipper. And for me, this is smaller than this one. And actually, I like still this one better than this. This feels kind of small sometimes. And also the one that I like from the Moondrop variations, you also get this cable Moondrop PCC, OCC, that you could also buy them separately. And because this is the first time the Moondrop includes this interchangeable jack, and it's a really welcome change. It's a really good one, so I don't need to change the cable to change the jack to 2.5 or the 3.5 or the 4.4 balance or single-ended. Okay, let's talk about the build quality, because this is I have tried a lot of Moondrops, and so far when it comes to build quality and it feels in my hand, for me this is my favorite one. I believe the faceplate is stainless steel and it's looking really good with variations writing on it and with this kind of unique patterns on it. And the main thing that I really like the most is the body. You need to see this, that it's really different. It's a medical grade resin, but it's really different from the one that you might find in the Moondrop Blessing or the Moondrop S8. In the Moondrop Blessing 2 or the Moondrop S8, you get a clear medical grade resin, but this one is sandblasted and also it's smoky grayish, but still you can see some from the inside. You can still see there's dynamic drivers and also some balancer armature here. Not really as clear as that, but the texture is what I found to be the most intriguing, because when I touch it, it feels like a mix between resin and also rubber, and somehow you get this kind of non-slippery rubber feelings on it. It just feels good, and I have never seen any kind of IMs looks like this and feels like this in my hand. It's just a really good sensation. And also the cable itself, this Moondrop PCC OCC, is really flexible. It's quite thin. It's twisted on the lower end, but it's a little bit microphonics, I should say. As for the ergonomics of this IM, I could say that if you are already familiar with Moondrop type of housing like this, it is really similar to the Moondrop Blessing. It's really similar even the shape is really similar, and the fit in my ears is also similar. Here's the thing, I have small Asian ears, and for me I could wear them for maybe around 1 or 2 hours only, but after that, because of the weight of this IM, it somehow kind of makes me a little sore on the ears. It's quite different from the Moondrop S8, because Moondrop S8, although it has similar kind of shape, but it's smaller and it's way much less than the Moondrop variations or the Moondrop Blessing. So yeah, if you're already accustomed to this kind of shape, it has quite big nozzle, and this part and the body part, it's actually really looks like a custom IM, so it fits your ear easily, but the weight is a thing that I really notice after I wear them after around 2 hours. If you have no problem with using the blessing tool, you will have no problem with this Moondrop variations too. Okay, as for the frequency response of this Moondrop variations, how could I describe it? Maybe DF neutral-ish with added sub bass, I think, because this is my DF neutral-ish IM, the X2 You can actually see that it has similar curve around the pinna gain area, but the Moondrop variations definitely has much more sub bass. And let me tell you, this sub bass is very noticeable. So if you are a fan of huge sub bass, you gotta try this Moondrop variations. And also, this is how is it compared to the Moondrop Blessing 2. And Moondrop Blessing 2, again, it has similar point actually around this area, around the pinna gain area, but the main difference is mostly on the sub bass area, where the Moondrop variations has, look at this, the added sub bass is so big, and also it's very noticeable compared to the Moondrop Blessing 2. And also, this is compared to the Moondrop S8. For me, the Moondrop S8 is also have a Harmon-ish kind of frequency response, Harmon neutral-ish, but again, the main differentiation point is around the sub bass area, and similar again, there's a similar pinna gain area, just like the usual Moondrop VSDF frequency response. But here's the thing I'd like to emphasize, that because of the contrast of this big sub bass and also quiet large pinna gain area around here, sometimes I can't help but think it somehow sounds V-shaped-ish, because there's a contrast in here and in here, and you can hear the hollowness around this point. But yeah, it's not in every song, but it's sometimes I could feel that it's somehow V-shaped-ish. Okay, as for the sound for this Moondrop variation, I've tried them using my Qlix 5K, i5X DSD, iBus with the X160, and also my phone, Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and for me, they are not suitable for phone use, because somehow they are a little bit hard to drive, that I recommend you to using a high-powered source instead. So, okay, let's talk about the tonality of this IM. No matter what I hear, because of that somehow contrast bass, and also the sub bass is big, I need to tell you that the bass sub bass is definitely big, and also there's an upper mid-range forwardness, and that makes it somehow a little bit V-shaped-ish thanks to that contrast. You don't really get a lower mid-range notes, but instead you get this energetic sub bass and also energetic upper mid-range. So it might not be as V-shaped as you think, but in some songs they feels like that because of that contrast. I hope you understand what I mean. But it still fall into a balance category for me. It's still good. Okay, let's talk about the bass. I have tried and reviewed almost all of the Moondrop's product. As you can see, I have tried the Moondrop S8, Moondrop Blessing 2, even the Blessing 1, KXSS Starfield, SSR Stardust, SSP, even the Moondrop Spaceship. And amongst all of those IM that I've ever tried for Moondrop, this is the bassiest one that I've tried. It has the much more sub bass than I imagined that Moondrop could give. Don't get me wrong, the sub bass is really big and it's deep and really punchy, so no matter what kind of song you throw at it, it will always sound energetic, and also with that sub bass. It depends on your taste, because for myself the sub bass could a little bit too much for my taste, but nevertheless, if you're a little bit of bass head and you like this kind of really deep sub bass, it's really good for you, because EDMs and also even pop songs and rock songs will throw that really good sub bass at you. And talking about the mid-range, if you're already again familiar with the vocals like the Moondrop Blessing 2, for me, it's somehow quite similar. It's more about the upper mid-range, so the female vocals and also male vocals that sounds a little bit thin, like Ed Sheeran or Justin Bieber, might sound a little bit forward. But if you're looking for thick male vocal, like for example Josh Groban, Michael Bublé, or even Il Divo, it will sound a little bit backward in positioning, but nevertheless, it's a clear vocal and still a quite detailed vocal, but it's just not meant for weighty male vocals. And also talking about the treble, now here's the unique thing is, because for a lot of electrostatic drivers in IEMs, they usually give this kind of airiness to the treble that makes the sounds more airy and also extended. But at these Moondrop variations, I don't really get that. Don't get me wrong, the treble is actually quite excellent. It has a lot of details, and also if you hear cymbal crash and also violin at the upper notes, it will sound good, it will sound clear, yeah. But it's not as airy as I would have expected. Maybe it's because of the tuning. They want to make this kind of smooth-ish treble tuning, but it somehow takes away the spatialness of the EST driver for me. But still, for me, it's still overall a balanced presentation for these Moondrop variations. And talking about the technicality of this IM, it's really good. I mean, no matter what kind of song I throw at them, even some pop songs, even some, or even when I try orchestral songs or music soundtrack that have a lot of elements in it, for me, these Moondrop variations will perform really greatly. The bass, vocal, and also instrumental sounds separated and with a lot of elements at the song. So yeah, the soundstage is also quite huge and three-dimensional. So yeah, again, when it comes to technicality, for me, it is an excellent IM at its price. We're talking about around 500 bucks. For me, it performs better, clearer, and also better in imaging compared to the Juno SA6 that I've ever tried before. And when it comes to comparison, I have this Moondrop Blessing 2 right here and also the Moondrop S8. And it's, you know, the Moondrop variation actually sits in the price tag between these two. It's not as cheap as the Blessing 2, which is cost around 300 bucks, and not as expensive at this S8 at 700 bucks, but this at the 500 bucks. So it's, yeah, it's exactly sitting in the middle, right in the middle of these two. But I have to say that it sounds really different. Like I said before, I have tried a lot of Moondrop products, and for me, this has the most sub bass that I've ever heard in any of Moondrop products. It's much more energetic compared to the somehow DF neutral-ish Moondrop Blessing 2 or the Harmon-ish Moondrop S8. Okay, I'm talking about them one by one. If you're already accustomed to the Moondrop Blessing 2, you know that it has a really well-balanced tonality on it. You get the bass, you get the really sweet and forward vocals, and you get that somehow sweet treble also. And you get that also in this Moondrop variation. But imagine that, but with as if the Moondrop variations is the Blessing 2 on steroids. It has bigger sub bass and also a little bit more forward vocal somehow, and also more sparkling treble. So it's a more energetic Blessing 2, like exactly like Blessing 2 in steroids, but with definitely better technicalities from imaging, also detail. When it comes to comparison with the S8, now S8 the most different one, because when it comes to bass only, I should say that the S8 might be the weakest, maybe because of its balanced armature bass. Somehow it's not as punchy, it's not as textured as these two. It's just quite good punch for a BA bass, but it cannot defeat dynamic bass for my personal preference. But for me, the main star of this Moondrop S8 is on the mid-range. For me, the mid-range on the S8 is one of the things that I like the most about IEMs. I mean about this IEM, the Moondrop S8 could give much more forward vocals. It might get shouty for some people, but for me, this vocal forwardness is also accompanied with clearness and also sweetness to it. So Moondrop S8 is still the most, for me, it's the most addicting of these three when it comes to vocal. Female vocal or even male vocal will sound forward and also clear with quite good sweetness to it. It's somehow addicting. But comparing these two are really different. The Moondrop variations has much more bass and also upper mid-range contrast that makes sounds more complete maybe for you, but the S8 is much more like a focused on the mid-range itself. When it comes to technicalities, I need to say that separation of the S8 for me is still a little bit better, but the soundstage and imaging for me is better in the variations. So for me, at technical level, they're actually on the same side. There are two better than this Moondrop Blessing 2. It's just like the Moondrop variations offer more complete satisfaction when you hear to it, more complete experience. You get bass, you get mid-range, you get treble, but for Moondrop S8, it's much more spatial on the mid-range alone. And for my personal preference, actually I still prefer the Moondrop S8 because I still get that bass, and somehow the bass on the Moondrop variation could be a little bit too much for my taste. So yeah, in the end for me, this Moondrop variation is a really good IM. And in technical performance, for me, it's just the same level as the Moondrop S8. Yes, because I have the S8 here, and I compare them. It's really close in technical performance with plus minus here and there. But it performs really different from the S8 because it's the most fun sounding Moondrop that I've ever tried. It has the biggest sub bass. And it also have this kind of, because of the contrast between the sub bass and also the vocal, for me it sounds quite V-shaped-ish in some way. But nevertheless, it's still really a really great performer for Moondrop. And again, for me, the price and the quality of this IM is really worth it. But just don't expect a lot from the electrostatic drivers, because I personally don't really get any benefit. I mean, I don't really hear really high treble extensions or something like that. It's just an okay-ish treble performance. As for myself, because I love vocals, for me this Moondrop S8, even though it's a little bit still too thin for me, the vocal sound, it still performs better in terms of vocal and also the emotions that you get when you hear vocal from the singer. Okay, I think that's all. Really good job, Moondrop, for making this additional IM around between the Moondrop Blessing 2 and the S8, and it performs beautifully. I really like this Moondrop variation. Okay, I think that's all. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you have any question, please write down in the comment below, and see you next time. Bye bye.